Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, April 18th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 138 days. The game against Michigan in 222 days. Little housekeeping before we get started. One note on the transfer portal for Ohio State. Kicker Jake Seibert is in the portal. He has been at Ohio State for a few years, kicked a little bit during the 2020 season during the COVID year, and then never really won a starting job. He is now headed to the transfer portal. And now the question is, are the Buckeyes going to be bringing some guys in through that same transfer portal as well? We have heard Ryan Day all but say that they are looking at people in the offensive line area to bolster this year's team, especially along the tackles, in the tackle spots. So it seems like they may be doing some portal shopping of their own coming up very soon. And we wanted to kind of discuss a couple of names that people may want to kind of keep in mind as possible targets. My guest today is Alex Gleitman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. He's been working on the transfer portal stuff. He's also been very busy on the recruiting front, which is his main beat for the Buckeye Huddle site. Alex, I guess let's start with the portal. You mentioned someone on our board as someone you had spoken to that seemed like might be a little bit of potentially mutual interest there. That is San Diego State's Josh Simmons. Let people know a little bit about him and maybe a couple other guys who are at least sort of names to know in terms of the potential transfer targets for Ohio State at the tackle spot.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Simmons is, he entered, it's weird. He missed the first window probably by like a week or a few days, I think it was, at that point. And he announced in early February, which is really unique timing. He didn't get to go through spring ball with San Diego State because he announced he was leaving. So he announced in early February, just officially hit the portal. So Ohio State couldn't contact him till I guess it was like 2 days ago or whatever at this point when the portal window opened. But they've been monitoring him. They've been following him for a while. I can confirm there has been contact there between the two parties. I don't know if there's an offer or any visits or how serious this is. But Josh Simmons, who started a bunch of games at right tackle, he was definitely a 4-star offensive lineman, I believe, in the class of 2020. He stayed home, San Diego State. I think he's looking for an opportunity to maybe jump to a little bit of a bigger school after starting at right tackle last year. So, I'm interested to see how that one develops. But for me, I just think I think Ohio State needs offensive linemen really bad. I think they're in a little bit of trouble, if I'm being quite honest, at offensive tackle. I think center, there's probably some internal solutions if like either Carson Hintzman or Vic Cutler kind of don't work out. But I think from an offensive tackle standpoint, if they could get a bona fide, like solid, rock solid, doesn't have to be like ridiculous like player, but like a rock solid left tackle, move Josh Fryer back to right tackle, I'd personally feel a lot better about it. They struck out on a few guys first time around. So I think, guys like Josh Simmons, there's a few other guys. Tom, I don't know if you're going to go through them or you want me to kind of expand on it, but I think that is really, to me, where the biggest focus has to be. But they're going to look to upgrade their whole roster across the board.
Yeah, just a couple of the names to know, and if you have thoughts on any of these individual guys, go ahead and share them. But I mean, Cortland Ford from USC, he's a tackle. He's in the portal. He started for USC. Caleb Etienne has started some games for Oklahoma State. He started a few games in 2021 when Jim Knowles was still there, so maybe there's a little bit of overlap there and was just the starter for the Cowboys last year. And then Emmanuel Pregnan, he is a guard out of Wyoming, but has, a little relatively younger and, might have a couple of years of eligibility left, and potentially you slide guys around if you bring him in. Any of those guys jump out to you as real possibilities, or, there's going to be a lot of names in the portal that don't end up at Ohio State, and those guys could be among those as well.
Yeah, honestly, I don't have a ton on like anything specific with Ohio State's interest in any of those guys, but I think they need to be looking at everyone and anyone, really doing their homework. What's really difficult is like you can't just like go out there and be like, we need an offensive tackle. Anyone who's interested in kind of leveling up from wherever you are and wanting to come to Ohio State, like, sure, come, we're open for business. Like, you can't really do that. So, I mean, I'm sure there's back channel ways where you can kind of spread the word and things like that. But for the most part, you're really dealing with the guys who are entering the portal themselves. And are they entering, like, if they were somewhere else, like the guy Cortland Ford, right? He's at USC. Like, why is he leaving USC? Like, that's a program that can win the Pac-12, make the college football playoff, win the national championship. Nobody would blink an eye. Like, why are you leaving USC, right? Like, and then some of these other guys at like the lower levels, like, great, they're really good there, but could they play at Ohio State? I mean, you're talking about even if you don't want to be overly optimistic, you're talking about one of the top 5 programs in America. Like, nobody's going to argue that. So that's a whole different level than Wyoming or Oklahoma State even, right? Who's a Power 5 school. So I think it's like people just say, like, let's just go to the portal and get a tackle. It's not that easy. You have to find someone like who fits into your culture. I think you also have to find someone from a talent level who, if you go get someone, they're going to have to come in and compete and earn the spot anyway. But like, if you're going to get someone to help fix your offensive line concerns, like, it better be someone who you're pretty confident can start at that level at Ohio State. So I think it's just not as easy as what you think. But I think Ohio State they're not dumb. They're going to look at every single player possibly available, probably at every single position. And we'll see where they go from here. I don't know where they've missed, other than maybe some NIL situations on some other guys in the first go around. But in my opinion, they can't really afford to miss on their top targets this go around.
Yeah, and one of the other things, I mean, you mentioned the culture fit, you mentioned the level of play fit. The other issue with tackle searches is they're not the only team looking to potentially upgrade at left tackle. I would venture to say that virtually every team in the nation would love to upgrade their left tackle spot. That's, you look at the NFL draft and left tackles at the NFL draft level, or edge rushers or quarterbacks. If this is a position that goes high in the NFL draft, it is a position that is probably going to be in very high demand in the transfer portal as well. So definitely have their work cut out for them. Ryan Day did say before the spring game that they do have a staffer monitoring and evaluating potential transfers full-time. That is a full-time job on staff right now. So they are definitely doing their due diligence on all that stuff. We'll see whether it pays off in the coming weeks. So one thing that they are also working on, they also have a lot of staffers working on, is recruiting. They just had a very busy recruiting weekend for the spring game. Alec, you have had a very busy last 48 hours or so, talking to a whole bunch of guys who were there in Columbus for that spring game, kind of figuring out, okay, where do they stand after their visits? How were the visits? All that kind of stuff. I'm going to kind of throw this over to you, and you can just pick a guy or two from each of the classes, 2024, 2025, and 2026, who are names to know, significant visits, something where the situation may have changed, someone who may be on commitment watch. Give us just, 2024, the upcoming class. Obviously, they have added a couple commits recently in Max LeBlanc and Sam Williams-Dixon, but they've got plenty more guys who are potentially, looking to be added to the class in the coming months. So who are a couple guys maybe to know out of the 2024 visitors from this past weekend?
Yeah, I would say 2 guys who I'd keep my eye on very closely moving forward. I'll start with kind of the lower hanging fruit. Ohio safety Reggie Powers got offer about a month ago now at this point. I think it's a matter of when, not if, he ends up committing to Ohio State. The guy's staff has been really excited about. I know his ranking doesn't get fans super excited, but if Ohio State is sold on an Ohio kid this early without having to make him camp, because Reggie Powers is a kid that if you wanted him to camp and show up and earn his offer, he would have done it. They were sold on this kid based on what they saw from him this past season. Had him in camp last year, had him on a few different visits. Feel he fits into what they want to do really, really well. Can play in the box at safety. Potentially, I know they're talking safety exclusively, but potentially can move to linebacker as well and be a really athletic linebacker for the Buckeyes too. So he was there this weekend, had a great time, hanging out with all the commits. One might even say it felt like he was a commit. But I think it's just a matter of when, not if, for Reggie Powers. The other 2024 guy I want to talk about is a guy who at 6'5", 200 pounds, I wouldn't normally call a defensive end. But I think, once he grows a little bit, puts on some more weight, is Booker Pickett, nephew of former Ohio State and NFL great Ryan Pickett. His father played in Miami, but obviously his uncle played at Ohio State, so he grew up always watching Ohio State from when from when he was younger. And this kid, regardless of his size or anything, one thing he is incredible at is rushing the passer. And I think that that's something that Ohio State, or really any program, could use at any time when they're on the defensive side of the field. And Jim Knowles has really wanted to use this jack position since he's come to Ohio State. It takes a little bit of a while to kind of recruit the personnel needed to run the system the way he wants to, and the way it was kind of all systems go at Oklahoma State his final year. Booker Pickett would be a guy, I think, who fits into that role perfectly. You could get really creative with him, move him all over, and just let him loose and let him go get the quarterback. So Ohio State, Georgia, Miami, South Carolina, those are the top 4 teams. Ohio State solidified themselves as one of those top 4 teams after this weekend, and they will get an official visit either this summer or sometime during the fall. 2025, a guy I'm going to point out, tight end, Emory Winston from Georgia. Kind of a little bit of a smaller guy, about 6'1", 230 pounds. Maybe ends up playing a little bit more of that like hybrid fullback tight end role that Mitch Rossi played at Ohio State, which I think Ryan Day actually really liked as part of his offense, allowed him to do some really unique things and kind of disguise some things. Emory's probably a little bit of a better receiver than Mitch was, definitely a little bit more athletic, more of a true tight end, but kind of in that similar type of body. So he's a kid who I think Ohio State leads for right now. He's from Georgia. I know he's 2025. Wouldn't be surprised if this recruitment ends sometime in the next few months. So I'll call out him. I'll also call out a couple other guys. Offensive lineman David Sanders from North Carolina, number 1 player in the country. First visit to Ohio State this weekend went as well as I think it possibly could have. It's very, very, very early in this one, but I think Ohio State kind of cemented themselves as a school to pay attention to moving forward, probably a school that will make that kind of top group along the way. He hung out with Paris Johnson a lot, which I think was really smart by Ohio State to kind of position that on this visit. I think they're similar types of players and people, and so that probably helped their cause a little bit. I also want to just call out defensive lineman Trent Wilson from Maryland. Second visit in about 2 weeks. He had an absolute blast. I don't think he wants to go as far as say Ohio State is his leader right now, but I would say if they're not the leader, they're one of the top 2 or 3 schools. This is a kid, potential 5-star kid. I believe he's a 4-star kid already in the 2025 class. Someone that will be a top target for Ohio State throughout the way. Just a different type of kid that, Alabama, Georgia are definitely all going to try and recruit. So if you get a kid like that who could play, I think he's probably a 3-tech at the next level. That's someone who I think could be a great addition to the program. And then 2026, I'll just kind of pair both these guys together. They had 2 Ohio offensive linemen, Sam Greer and Maxwell Riley, 2 kids who already have offers from Ohio State in that class. They had them down for the spring game. They're in great shape for both of those guys, but it's super, super early. I don't expect a decision for at least a year, if not longer, for either of those 2 guys. When you have high-level offensive linemen and defensive linemen in the state of Ohio, you have to lock them up, and I think Ohio State realize that. They're doing that. They've offered these kids earlier, much earlier than they offer most kids. So they think definitely very highly of them early on in the process.
Yeah, and if you want to understand just how early we are in the process there, these are offensive linemen. So these are generally guys who are going to take 2 to 3 years to develop before they're on the field and we're ready to start. So if you're a 2026 offensive lineman, you might be on the field in 2027 or 2028. So yeah, it's gonna be a minute, but definitely a couple guys to know there. David Sanders in 2025, obviously number 1 overall player according to some ranking sources. So some very, very big offensive line targets for Justin Fry already kind of on the radar and the work being done. So definitely names we're going to be talking about a bunch more in the coming weeks and months and possibly years. But again, lots of interesting news on the recruiting front potentially coming for Ohio State. And with Georgia having a 5-star decommit, Ohio State has actually now leapfrogged them and now has the number 1 recruiting class in the class of 2024, according to at least one source. So things not going too badly for Ohio State right now. So that will do it for today. Make sure you check out BuckeyeHuddle.com to find all of Alex's great work. He just released his projected class for 2024 on the defensive side of the ball. An update on that, you can find a bunch of that on the Huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com, as well as great coverage from Mark Givler and his Skull Session column, all sorts of team coverage, all sorts of X's and O's breakdowns from our scheme gurus, all that great stuff, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Sign up today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.